The Church of Numbers. 098346509834567098.
So, the question is, how does one create a convincing simulation? Before we can get there, it is crucial that you have a full understanding of how you perceive the world around you. All of your senses, sight, hearing, taste, touch and the sense of smell, all depend on one thing: electrical signals. Let's start with this example. Imagine that you are in your everyday life, looking at a teddy bear. The light bounces off of the surface and races outwards. The light is captured by the photosensitive cells in your eye. Once captured, the light is then converted into an electrical signal, and delivered to your visual cortex. Bravo! You are now seeing. Well, not so fast. I am afraid that it is not that simple. If captured on an external device, the electrical signals traveling from the eye would just be a series of meaningless, random pulses of electricity. This means that your eye does not see per se. It is your visual cortex, which interprets those, seemingly random, electrical signals and creates the images, which you then assume to be the external world. When you squint, due to a bright light, it is not because your brain is flooded with light. The inside of your skull is perfectly dark. The brain does not see what is actually there. It interprets what it thinks is there. And trust me, if your brain was so great at seeing exactly what is out there, magicians and television would have never made it as forms of entertainment. Sleight of hand fools you, by tricking your interpretation of what is happening, sometimes by the use of optical illusions. Just as flickering of an older television screen displays 24 individual frames per second, fooling your visual system into interpreting this flickering as a continuous movement. All of your senses work the same way. They interpret electrical impulses produced by cells and carried by the nervous system. Humans see about 1% of the electromagnetic wave spectrum. We call this frequency visible light. But there is an ocean of frequencies out there. Human eyes, similar to a radio tuned to a particular frequency, can detect this very limited range. And to you, this range is assumed to be reality. I hope that you now understand. The external world is your own, subjective, interpretation of it. The world you see is inside your head, not out there. Out there is a boiling ocean of untold number of frequencies, crisscrossing and bouncing, some as fast as the speed of light. If you were able to see the full spectrum, I imagine that you would go insane very quickly. Now, let's perform an evil experiment. I, the evil genius, possess a superquantum computer, with almost limitless computational power. I am also a master programmer, and I have prepared a very special program for you. You go to sleep. Your last memory is of your room. At night I sneak into your room and give you a shot which knocks you out. I then take you to my lab and, very carefully, remove your brain and place it in a life-sustaining container. So, now you are asleep and completely oblivious that you no longer have a body. Now, I connect your brain to my supercomputer where I have prepared a perfect replica of your room and the world outside. I start to emulate the same electrical signals that your eyes, skin and ears use to produce. Eventually you wake up. Amazingly, you notice no difference whatsoever. Your brain has absolutely no idea that it is being fooled. This idea is called a brain in a vat. Just to be clear, I am not saying that we are brains in vats or that we live in the Matrix. What I am trying to do is to make sure that you understand how unreliable our senses really are. It all comes down to bioelectrical and biochemical processes. And this is what our reality is. A subjective interpretation. Imagine two people looking at the sky. One claims that the sky is blue and the other claims that it is orange. Who is correct? Objectively, they are both wrong. Color is just an interpretation of a certain frequency. Subjectively, they are both right. The person seeing a blue sky sees what a vast majority of us see. The person seeing the orange sky has a genetic disorder causing their brain to misinterpret what rest of us perceive as the color blue. This actually happens. Synesthesia is a disorder which causes the sufferers to see music, hear scent and smell numbers. Again, this is how they interpret their subjective reality. I hope that we are on the same page now. Let's move on. Please keep in mind that our reality is quantized. This means that energy travels in discrete packets. The reason for this is that the universe cannot be infinitely divided. To make it simple to understand, think of everything in our universe as being either 1 or 2, 3 or 4. And not 1.7, 2.3 or 3.5. This applies to energy, time and space. Those minimum values have been calculated independently by several physicists and are widely accepted as factual. They are usually referred to as Planck base units. Those units are so immensely small that we cannot actually observe them. But we can prove them mathematically. So, nothing is continuous, rather, everything moves Planck length to Planck length. Time ticks, one Planck time at a time. This is similar to a slinky on the stairs. To get the bottom, it has to go step by step. Each step is a Planck length. To make a long story short, we live in a digital universe. So, let's build our universe. First, we need to define a space where things can happen. We must define dimensions. You could get away with just 1 or 2. Length and width. But 3 is definitely better. I believe that 3 dimensions offered the most efficient ratio of dimensions and freedom of movement. Now we have 3 dimensions. Then, it is a good idea to set the absolute minimum and maximum parameter values so that the resources used may be predicted. This also helps in preventing simulations from creating errors and running wildly out of control. We must set the maximum speed at which the simulation refreshes itself. This is similar to a CPU load dedicated to the simulation. In our case, that would be Planck time. Then we must set the maximum speed of movement inside the simulation. When moving virtual items around, you need to limit their speed or the CPU load may become too great. If you were building a simulation which allows for instant teleportation, this would not need to be considered. But, since we are building our universe, where things move one Planck length at a time, we have to account for this. Speed of light is our speed limit. Then we need to set the minimum distance between 2 points. This is where Planck length comes in. This is similar to an unimaginably fine, three-dimensional grid that spans the universe. You need this so that energy can travel in this grid. Like the slinky, we cannot have energy skipping steps. Finally, we need time. You need time so that everything does not happen all at once. Again, this is where the Planck time comes in as the minimum value. Now, we have our basic ingredients. We have a virtual place where things can happen, and we have made sure that we have limited how fast they can happen. Now, we program in the universal constants such as gravity, elementary charge, electron mass, etc. There are close to 30 of the constants, so I will not list them all. Once you have all the ingredients, you have a construct. This is where things can happen, but only according to the unbreakable laws of physics. You throw in the right amount of virtual, pure energy and press the start button. If all works according to the plan, our universe was just born. Now, the laws of physics take over, and as they say, the rest is history. Gases coalesce into more complex materials, and in time energy becomes what we call matter. I must mention time again. We tend to think in terms of our limited lifespans, even when considering the incredibly long lifespan of our universe. As promised, I will get to the issue of time later. Some of the viewers may criticize this segment as being too simplistic. Although a fair criticism, in reality the two most important technical ingredients are computational power and good programming. The rest is just time and trial and error. We have absolutely no idea how many times previous universes fizzled out of existence due to coding errors or wrong mix of starting parameters. In early 2012, a simulation of our universe was performed. The evolution of 550 billion particles was being observed, from the birth of the universe all the way to the present day. What if you can achieve what took many months of real-time calculation, in 1/1000th of a second? Does it still sound so outlandish to propose that our reality may indeed be a simulation? The truth of this matter is that we can describe our reality mathematically. There are mathematics involved even in biological life. Proportions and symmetries follow certain formulas. Well, enough of this. Time to move on. In part 3 we will examine the evidence, and later we shall look at the big picture.